Right.
And so I think it could accrue if you can find those DDR patients. My concern about this trial, I know you didn't ask, is, whether I think you'll see a positive signal. That I'm actually much less sure about. Basically because I think your comparator arm is actually very strong and very good. And so to be able to demonstrate a PFS and OS benefit out of that is a very tall order.
Right. And then do you believe that the endpoints are acceptable or good?
Yes, I do. The other question you didn't list in here is whether you're going to allow for crossover in this trial. That's something you want to think about.
Okay. And what would be the implications of allowing or not allowing?
Of having crossover? Okay. So, so the two things you want to think about is whether you're going to analyze the PFS and OS based on intention to treat or not, because intention to treat will, I don't know how to describe it statistically, but if it's an intention to treat population, okay, even if patients were randomized to an arm, but they never got the therapy, like because they, I don't know, died or something, okay, or they changed their mind, you would still count them as being randomized to that arm. And so in an intention to treat design, usually the data is the most conservative, meaning that you could lose out on a signal, which is really there, but you don't see it, okay? But in all of the current, Pembro trials that just recently came out, it's all intention to treat design, which means the fact that they got like an overall survival signal is all the more impressive, okay? And then with regard to crossover, and so the effect of crossover is also it can dilute out your signal. Because in the Keynote 189, that was a crossover trial, meaning if you were originally randomized to the non-Pembro arm and then you progressed on chemo, they will let you go on to the Pembro arm. And so typically in a crossover trial, again, your signal has to be extremely strong for you to actually see that results, okay? Which is why I think most of us feel that Keynote 189 is so impressive because despite intention to treat, despite crossover, they still got a very, very robust survival signal, okay? On the flip side, okay, if you know the recent Keynote 42 that was just presented, even though Merck billed that as a positive trial, okay, several years ago, BMS did a very similar trial. It was like Checkmate 26 using single agent Nivo. And then with a Checkmate 26, that trial was not positive using single agent Nivo, whereas the Merck trial using single agent Pembro was positive. But then when I looked at the results, just like yesterday, okay, I realized there was a key difference because on Checkmate 26, they did allow for crossover, whereas in the Pembro Keynote 42, they did not, okay? And then if you look at the signal from the Pembro trial, right, they basically saw that survival benefit very late, and the survival benefit was mainly driven by the high PD-L1 greater than 50% group. And so a lot of us were questioning if they actually allowed for crossover, like the Checkmate trial, right, whether that Pembro trial would have failed. And so those are the ways that like crossover and intention to treat can actually bias your results. But, if you get a positive signal for intention to treat, and also crossover allowed, right? Generally, like no one is going to argue that result is like real.